The Red Canyon Territory was a place where the law had never taken hold. It was landscape built for hiding. Towering rock formations, hidden valleys, caves that went back into the earth for miles. For 15 years, Jacob Morgan had used these canyons as a sanctuary. He was an outlaw not because he'd been born to it, but because circumstances and choices had conspired to make him one. His last bank robbery had netted him enough money to disappear, and he'd done exactly that, bringing his daughter deeper into the wild each year. Sarah was 22 years old, and she'd never lived in a town with more than 100 people. She'd grown up on horseback, learned to shoot before she could properly read, and knew the terrain of the canyons better than she knew the names of cities. She was beautiful in a way that frontier women are beautiful, strong and weathered, with her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubborn jaw. She was also entirely unprepared for a man who rode into their hidden camp on a Tuesday morning in September. His name was Thomas Merrick, and he was a bounty hunter. He didn't arrive with guns blazing. That wasn't his style. Thomas was methodical, patient, intelligent. He'd tracked Jacob Morgan for 6 months across 3 territories, following breadcrumbs and rumors, building a map of the man's movements. He knew Jacob came to this canyon every fall. He knew Jacob had a daughter. He knew approximately where the camp would be. And he knew that Jacob Morgan was worth $5,000, more money than Thomas had ever had. Enough to finally stop doing this work that burned away his soul one bounty at a time. But he didn't expect to find the daughter alone. Sarah was gathering wood when she heard the horse. Every survival instinct, she had screamed at her to run, to hide, to get her father. Instead, she stood with an armful of branches and watched as the man dismounted. He was maybe 35, with the kind of weathered face that suggested a life spent under the sun. He wore the clothes of a working man, dust-covered denim, worn leather, a hat that had seen better days. But it was his eyes that caught her. They were intelligent and sad, with the kind of exhaustion that came from doing something you fundamentally believed was wrong. "I'm looking for Jacob Morgan," he said. Not a question, a statement. "I know," Sarah replied. "You're the bounty hunter everyone's been talking about, the one that never gives up." "That's me," Thomas said. He didn't draw his gun. He didn't make any threatening moves. He simply looked at her with recognition in his eyes. The recognition of someone who understood that she was exactly what she claimed to be. "Is he here?" "He will be eventually," Sarah said. "He always comes back to camp in the evening." "Then I'll wait," Thomas said. He waited with her while she finished gathering wood. He helped her carry it back to camp. He watched while she prepared dinner. Beans and cornbread, simple food made with practiced efficiency. He sat across from her at the campfire and talked about nothing important. The weather, the landscape, the way the canyon looked different depending on the time of day. When Jacob Morgan returned at dusk, Sarah watched her father see Thomas and understand immediately what was happening. She watched the recognition, the calculation, the moment Jacob realized he was caught. And then she watched her father do something unexpected. He sat down. "I've been running for 15 years, Jacob said to Thomas. "I've been watching for men like you every day. I knew eventually one would be good enough to find me." He looked at his daughter. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I'm sorry I brought you into this life." "You didn't bring me," Sarah said. "I chose to stay. Every day I chose to stay." Thomas didn't move. He didn't reach for his gun. He simply sat and listened to a father and daughter speak to each other, as if the bounty hunter wasn't even there. "You should go," Jacob said to Sarah. "Go to the town of Redemption, south of here. Tell them Jacob Morgan sent you. They'll take you in. They take in people who don't fit anywhere else." "I'm not leaving you," Sarah said. "You have to," Jacob replied, "because I'm not running anymore. I'm tired, Sarah. I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. I'm tired of stealing and lying and watching you grow up thinking this is normal." He looked at Thomas. "I'll go peacefully. No fight, no gunplay. That's my promise. But my daughter leaves first." "That's not how this works," Thomas said. "I know," Jacob said, "but that's my condition. Either she leaves now, or I'll make this complicated. And we both know that complicated means blood." Thomas looked at Sarah. She was staring at her father with tears on her face, understanding what he was doing. He was choosing her freedom over his own. He was purchasing her escape with a surrender. "Pack what you need," Thomas said to Sarah. "You have 30 minutes. She packed in a daze, clothes, her mother's few possessions, money her father had hidden for emergencies. She saddled her horse with hands that felt like they belonged to someone else. And then she stood in front of her father, and Jacob Morgan pulled his daughter close and held her like he was trying to memorize the feeling of her. "Go to redemption," he whispered. "Build a life. Forget about me." "I'll never forget about you," Sarah said. "I know," Jacob replied, "but live anyway." Thomas rode out the canyon with Jacob in front of him, hands bound but unburdened. Sarah rode in the opposite direction, toward redemption, carrying everything she owned and nothing she'd ever wanted to lose. She made it 3 days before she turned around. The territorial prison in Santa Fe was a fortress of stone and steel, built to break the spirit of every prisoner it contained. Sarah went to Warden and told him she was Sarah Morgan, the outlaw's daughter, and she wanted to see her father. The warden laughed and told her visitors weren't allowed. Sarah offered him money, a lot of money, the money her father had taught her to hide for emergencies. The warden took it and brought her to a small room where her father could be seen through a thick glass partition. "You were supposed to go to redemption," Jacob said when he saw her. "I know," Sarah replied. "I got there, and then I left. I couldn't abandon you." "You have to," Jacob said. "Sarah, listen to me. I'm going to hang. That's what happens to men like me. You can't change that. But you can change what happens next. You can take the life I sacrificed, and you can actually live it." "I don't want a life you sacrificed," Sarah said. "I want you behind the barrier, separated by glass and impossible circumstance." They both understood that wanting was enough. But something unexpected happened while Sarah was waiting for her father's trial. She began to see Thomas Merrick regularly. He came to the prison to testify, to document the capture, to handle the legal paperwork that turned a successful bounty into reward money. And each time he came, he found excuses to speak with Sarah. "I'm sorry," he said to her one afternoon. "I'm sorry that I'm the reason you lost your father." "You didn't lose him," Sarah said. "He lost himself a long time ago. You just finally caught up with him." "That doesn't make it better," Thomas said. "No," Sarah agreed, "but it makes it honest. You did your job. He made his choice to run, and he made his choice to surrender. You're not responsible for either of those things." They talked more after that. Thomas began to understand that Sarah wasn't bitter about what he'd done. She was grieving, yes, but she understood the mechanics of justice in the frontier. And Sarah began to understand that Thomas, this man whose profession was hunting people, was fundamentally decent. He didn't celebrate the capture. He didn't glory in the danger or the violence. He was simply doing work that society had deemed necessary, even though it was destroying him. The night before Jacob Morgan was scheduled to hang, Thomas came to Sarah's small rented room in Santa Fe. "I want you to leave town," he said. "I don't want you to watch." "I'm going to watch," Sarah said. "He's my father." "I know," Thomas said, "but I don't want that to be your last memory of him. I don't want you to carry that image for the rest of your life." Sarah looked at this man who'd captured her father, this man who betrayed her family, this man who somehow understood her better than anyone ever had. And she realized something that shocked her. She loved him. She loved the bounty hunter who destroyed her world, and she was going to have to live with that contradiction for the rest of her life. "Come with me," Thomas said. "Leave Santa Fe. Leave this territory. Start over somewhere that doesn't remind you of your father or this place." "And do what?" Sarah asked. "Build a life," Thomas said. "The life your father wanted you to have." Jacob Morgan was executed at dawn on a cold November morning. The execution was public, and Sarah watched in the crowd, and Thomas stood beside her, not touching her but present, bearing witness to her grief. Afterward, when the body was cut down and the crowd dispersed, Thomas took Sarah to the train station. "Go to California," he said, "or back east. Go somewhere you can forget all of this." "Come with me," Sarah said. "I can't," Thomas replied. "You know I can't. I'm a bounty hunter. You're the outlaw's daughter. Every moment we're together is a reminder of what I took from you. No, Sarah said. Every moment we're together is a reminder that redemption is possible. That people can be more than one choice. That you can hunt someone and still respect them. That I can love you even though you're the reason my father is dead. That's not love, Thomas said. That's trauma bonding. Maybe, Sarah said. Or maybe it's the truest kind of love. The kind that sees you completely, including the parts you hate about yourself. Thomas left Santa Fe 3 days later. Sarah watched him ride out of town and didn't try to stop him. She understood that some people needed to be pursued, and she was willing to pursue him across whatever distance was necessary. It took her 2 years. She found him in a small ranch town in Colorado, where he bought land and was trying to build something legitimate. He was trying to be something other than a bounty hunter, a rancher, a regular man, someone who could walk into a saloon without violence following. He was struggling, clearly, with the transition, but he was trying. Sarah arrived on a quiet evening and rode directly to his ranch. He was on the porch when she came up the driveway, and he recognized her immediately. He didn't greet her with joy. He greeted her with despair. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I know," Sarah replied, "but I am." "I'm not going to let you do this," Thomas said. "I'm not going to let you build a life around me. I'm not going to let you make me the center of your world just because we experienced something intense together. I'm not trying to make you the center of my world," Sarah said. "I'm trying to build a world where you're part of it. There's a difference." She stayed in the nearby town for a month. She worked at the general store. She built a life. And she spent time with Thomas, slowly, carefully, letting him understand that she was serious. She wasn't a grieving girl looking for distraction. She was a woman who'd chosen him despite everything that logic suggested she should hate him for. Eventually, he surrendered. They married in the small church in the nearest town, with only the pastor and 2 witnesses present. There was no great celebration, no family present to bless the union, but there was honesty. There was recognition of what they both lost and what they'd chosen to build instead. 10 years later, Sarah and Thomas Merrick ran one of the most successful ranches in Colorado. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, who grew up understanding that family wasn't always simple, that love could be complicated, and that sometimes the most powerful relationships are built on a foundation of overcoming impossible odds. Sarah never forgot her father. She kept his memory alive in stories. She told her children about a man who made mistakes but loved his daughter enough to surrender to justice. She kept his memory alive in the values she taught her children: honesty, integrity, the importance of taking responsibility for your choices. Thomas never stopped hunting entirely, but he limited his work to the most dangerous criminals, the ones who were actively hurting people. He'd learned that bounty hunting could be a form of justice instead of a form of violence. And he'd learned that redemption was possible, not for criminals he caught necessarily, but for himself. The story of the outlaw's daughter and the bounty hunter became legend in both the criminal underworld and in the territories where law enforcement worked. It became a story about how people could transcend their circumstances, about how love could grow from the most unlikely soil, about how 2 people who should have been enemies could instead build something beautiful. And in a small town in Colorado, on the porch of a ranch house at sunset, Sarah and Thomas would sit together and remember, not with bitterness, but with understanding, the moment when everything changed, the moment when a bounty hunter showed up at a camp in the Red Canyons, and an outlaw's daughter realized that sometimes love arrives where in the face of the person you're supposed to hate. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to look past that, you find that it's real.